Hi, Ben here, and welcome to another Work in Progress Wednesday. Slightly different today. It's such a beautiful spring morning that I thought it was a great time to come down the field because we need to actually gather some materials. We're going to be doing a little bit of hedge laying at the weekend, and I need to get some stakes and what we call binders or heathers, which are the thing that sort of bind the top of the hedge together. So we've come down the field where there's lots of hazel, lots of really useful resources, and this is a little hazel stool that I've basically been cutting spears and bits of bean stick and thumbsticks off since I was a small boy. So I've basically been able to coppice and reuse this for far too many years now. So it actually got pushed over. We had some cows in the field one time and they actually went round the back in the stream and made it go all sort of erode the roots, and it fell over. And then these are all the reshoots off it. So we should get some really good resources off this particular stool. So we've brought a couple of saws down with us. We've brought a Silky Super Excel 21. This has got a relatively sort of large blade on it. And we've also brought the classic Laplander folding saw. And we often get asked which is the best saw for bushcraft. Well, the question is they're both fantastic, but they have got some different features to think about. So the Silky saws have got this very aggressive tooth pattern, which only cuts on the pull stroke. The way that the blades are made on the Silkies is they're actually ground thinner behind the teeth. There is no actual set to the teeth. So having this thinner ground edge behind the blade means that they cut very aggressively, but you have got to be a bit more conscious of how you use the saw. So they only cut on the pull stroke. Also, they're not coated, so you need to make sure that you don't sort of let them get wet and sit in your tool bag because they will get corrosion and rust on there. But they both lock. That's got a lock feature in 2 settings, but some people don't like the Silkies because they don't lock shut. There is no lock to stop that opening. But to be honest, if you tighten the screw, I've never had them actually come sort of open in my bag or anything like that. Now, the classic Laplander that everybody loves, they have got a coated blade, so they don't rust, but the coating will wear with use, obviously, like all things, but it's a very durable coating, so it lasts a long time. Now, the tooth pattern on these, it has got a set to the tooth pattern, so the blade is the same thickness from the front to the back, but the teeth are splayed with what we call a set, and that is what allows the blade to sort of travel through the curve that you're creating. Because they're the same thickness throughout, there is less fear of you breaking the blade. They tend to bend rather than break, and you can almost straighten them out. But the great thing about the tooth pattern on the Laplander is they do cut on the push and the pull stroke. So if you want a general purpose saw that you can take out into the field that you can rip timber with as well as cross cut, then the Barco Laplander is a great option. They do cut slightly slower than the Silky, so that's something to think about. But what people like about them is they do lock open and they do also lock shut, so there's no fear of that opening in your bag. A little bit lighter. They're an all plastic construction on the handle with obviously only metal pivots here and obviously the metal blade, whereas the Silky is an aluminium body. So pros and cons. I mean, because I'm cutting lots of timber, mostly cross cutting, I tend to take the Silky with me because they just cut so aggressively, and that's what I'm going to be using for cutting my materials off this hazel stool. So the beauty of a resource like a hazel stool is you obviously get very thin shoots coming off, so that's almost like perfect for doing your twists or making arrow shafts. And then you've got a variety of different thicknesses. So for a hedge stake, we're probably looking at something that's like 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter. So this looks like an absolutely perfect piece of wood to cut out. And looking at the length of it, we should get a few hedge stakes out of it. So I'm going to use my Silky. Don't worry about cutting really low to start with. We want to get the resource out first and then we'll clean up the cut afterwards. So I'm going to put a little cut in this side, and if I can get my saw in, it's a little bit tricksy, cut at a slight angle, and we should be able to cut this material out of all the rest of the rods. Oh yeah, let that snap off. Hopefully we can get that out, and I'll drag that out into the open, but that's going to give us a lot of useful hedge stakes out of that one. So the sap is already starting to flow. This is almost a little bit late in the season for coppicing material. You can cut materials any time of the year, but obviously if you cut it when the sap is flowing through the stem itself, you'll find that it won't last as long. It's more prone to being sort of eaten by woodworm and things like that, because it's so sugary and sort of got all those lovely that sort of sappy build up in the actual timber itself. So if you want hazel to last a long time, cut it in the dormant season from sort of November to sort of end of February really. We're into the beginning of March now, so we're a little bit late, but that's typical us. But the main factor when you've cut any resources from the timber, from a stool like this, is once you've got rid of it and got it out of the way and there's no tension on there, it's worth coming in and then taking off a really nice clean cut, because that's going to stimulate it to regrow. This is just like a management process really. So we'll cut that little split off and you can see that we've got this lovely clean cut, and that's where we're going to stimulate all that growth, and we're going to get some fresh shoots coming off it, probably within this season really, and then we can come back and harvest it as we want then. So in the few minutes that we've cut this stem, you can really start to see how that sap is actually running down the edge now. So this is definitely the time where you'll go out and you'll tap your birch trees to get the sap, or I've never drunk hazel sap, but maybe it's worth trying. So we've got that piece of material out, and now rather than struggling to drag it out, what I tend to do is actually cut it to the lengths that I need while it's still freestanding. So you've probably all heard the sort of the quote, the rule of thumb. So that's like a carpentry term, because your thumb is pretty much an inch from the side of the knuckle to the side of the knuckle. Well, you tend to use your body for a lot of measuring when you're in the woods. So for hedge stakes, the perfect hedge stake length is tip of the nose. So I don't have to worry about taking a tape measure with me. I can pretty much stand, mark that position, and then cut that hedge stake the right length. And I know they're all going to be the same length then. And the beauty of letting it hang like that is that drops down. I can then mark the next one, and I'm not going to have to struggle to drag a long length out of the woods. I can just leave all the waste behind to drop down for a little habitat pile or kindling in a few years' time. Right, so I'll drag that out. And then those hedge stakes, obviously if you've got side branches, you can take those off. But because that's quite shaded down below, you haven't got any side branches coming off here. But that's going to be a perfect hedge stake. But it's not going to go in the ground very easily with a blunt butt to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a point on it now. So the way I point it is I've normally got a billhook or a parang with me when I'm hedging or out in the woods. And to put a point on this, there's an easy way to do it. So I'll just make sure that that lanyard's not going to get caught on my trousers. And I use my thigh as a resting point for this. And I'm going to strike with the parang, and I'm going to put 4 slicing cuts progressively round the piece of timber. Now a lot of people will think, oh, it's very dangerous because you're striking near your leg. The impact is always behind where your leg is, and you're just using your thigh as a support for the actual stick itself. So we'll strike. That's the first cut. Then we turn it and we put the next cut, and then we turn it again. And then the final cut on this side will give us our point. And that's going to be perfect for going into the ground. We'll use a wooden mallet, knock it in, and that'll be great for going in and holding our hedge all in place. So we've cut some heatherings or some binders, and basically they're just sort of longer, thinner poles, probably back to that rule of thumb, about thumb thickness at the base, obviously as long as you can get them. Now they will have more side branches on, so the technique that I use for taking off those side branches is with my parang or my bill hook, whichever you've got, hold the butt end and make sure that you rest the tool, the parang, on the actual branch itself, and you're just going to strike forward. Now, obviously, when your hand's here, there's no fear of you cutting yourself because the tool never goes sort of beyond where your hand is. So that's the safety. And even these little side shoots are worth taking off, because when you're using the rod, these little side shoots can be really quite rough on the hand as well. So smooth all those off. The secret is to keep that blade, the side of the actual blade, touching the rod at the whole time. If you tilt it at an angle, that will cut into the rod, it'll damage the bark, and then when you bend it, that's when it will break. So make sure you keep it nice and flat, work all the way along, basically sliding it underneath your arm as you go, until you get to the point where you think, actually that's starting to get a little bit too thin. This is actually pretty good, look, it's almost a uniform thickness right to that very end, and then you can just take off that extra waste. And there's one heather in basically, or one binder. So I'll get a few more cut. And the beauty of something like this kind of resource, I'll just go, I won't take the side branches off here, but I'll get to this area. Obviously this forks, you could keep both sides and weave them into the hedge, but what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to take off this side branch and strike that off. And you might think, wow, that's a bit of waste. But if you keep all these and take those and keep them for your garden, they're perfect for your peas. They're like pea sticks. So keep those bundled up, and that'd be great for your peas, or if you've got delphiniums or things like that in your garden that tend to droop as they grow. These little pea sticks are absolutely fantastic for it. So keep those to one side as well. So nothing is wasted. So that's what we've been working on this Wednesday. Hope you can all get out and enjoy a bit of this spring sunshine that we're getting and hear those birds calling. But yeah, we've gathered some resources, so we'll take these up and maybe we get a bit of hedge laying done this weekend. So thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, please feel free to email us. And remember to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.